Why do I panic when someone takes hours to reply? And why do I pull away the moment that things get serious? These might look like opposites, but they actually come from the same place. The early lesson that closeness is neither safe nor steady. I'm joined today by my colleague, Dr. Reem, to unpack the stories running underneath the way we love, the way we work, and the way we treat ourselves, and why having insight alone almost never shifts them. Welcome, Reem. It's so nice to have you today.
Thank you, Sarah, for inviting me.
So, when we were talking about this episode, one of the things that we were looking at is kind of the stories that people tell themselves. And I wanted to contextualize it in the therapy space. So, when you have a client coming in to see you and they tell you that they have anxiety, what are some of the things that you're looking for?
Yeah, and this is such a common way of initiating therapy or seeking out therapy, is that people will come in kind of self-diagnosed or having actually been properly diagnosed, specifically with anxiety. And oftentimes what I'm looking for is their relationship to the anxiety itself, their interpretation of the physiological symptoms that signal onset of anxiety for them, the narrative they have constructed about where that anxiety comes from, how they respond to it, who it shows up with, the context in which they have created this relationship to what they term anxiety. And oftentimes it is in fact anxiety, and that is what I want, where I want to start my experience with them, is exploring that relationship, that story of the self in relationship to these anxious symptoms.
Okay, so why don't we look at maybe a tangible expression of this in the therapeutic space? So let's imagine someone comes to see you and they're expressing some anxiety that they have in the workplace. So they're noticing that every time they get an email from their boss, they're experiencing this anxiety. Scanning it, always looking for something that's negative, or if they get an instruction or something that they need to do, not being able to eat, not being able to sleep until the task is finished.
Yeah, and this is a very typical and classic case of how anxiety kind of starts to rear its head. And this is really why we understand anxiety as a symptom of something much deeper. There are deeper roots for what you're describing. I'm starting to then wonder about this person's self-perception, the standards that they hold themselves to, the way that they respond to their own achievements, whether they're able to perceive them and actually value them. So really, this is where we're treating the anxiety as the tip of the iceberg, and we want to delve deeper into what's happening at the pre-conscious and subconscious level. What is forming their identity and their perception of themselves, such that when they experience the stimuli, this email, it's perceived as a threat to the internal self-perception, right, to internal self-worth. And there's an expectation of failure or underachievement. And this is really where the narrative comes from about the self. There's this idea that when I am prompted, somehow I will fail, somehow I will come up short. And this is what we really want to get to. And yeah, this is where I'll start, is what is the sort of automatic thought that comes to your mind when you receive these requests at work?
Yeah, when I'm hearing you explain it as a social psychologist, what's really coming up for me is the concept of the social self, right? So we have the self-concept. So how do we see ourselves? We have self-esteem. How do we feel about ourselves? And then we have the self-presentation. So how do we show ourselves to others? So when you're probing and delving into where some of these things are coming from, what are some of the elements that you ask about?
I'm always curious about where they first recognized
Okay.
that this was anxiety, and how they came to label it as such, how it developed. I mean, these symptoms always have a story, an origin story of protection. They came about as a result of threats that that these clients didn't have the tools for, and so they came to become overly prepared, hyper vigilant, vigilant about performance out of fear, out of terror of being overly criticized, or as a result of an overinflated sense of responsibility. So I'm always curious about these early seeds that were planted around such that these protective mechanisms came to develop. And we ultimately want to arrive at this place of recognizing that while these mechanisms were protective at a time, they no longer serve you, or we want to be curious about whether they no longer serve the client. But really, I want to go into the client's history about how these mechanisms developed and when they started to recognize them. And these are two different stages. That moment of recognition, and that often comes with a feeling of failure, with a feeling of weakness. And at times there can be something really validating for people to know that what they've been experiencing is actually described as anxiety on a clinical level. It really comes to be internalized, and this is a phenomena that really worries me these days, where symptoms become part of identity, a part of people's identity, and we have to do so much work to
Unravel. Yeah. So one of the things that you will look at is when the seeds sort of got planted, which I would imagine for most people is earlier in life, sometimes quite early. And I think this is a good opportunity for us to kind of talk about how our past, our history, our early experiences do shape our present challenges. At the same time, I know what I hear constantly from people that are maybe a little bit interested in therapy but resistant is this idea that I don't want to just come and sit across from a clinician and just talk about what mom and dad did wrong in my childhood. I'm suffering, I'm struggling now. So how do I manage and cope with what I'm experiencing today?
Yeah, and both things are true, right? Understanding where these symptoms or these internal conflicts come from is very important for the corrective emotional experiences that we as clinicians aim to give our clients in therapy, and at the same time, clients are entitled to be provided with skills, with interventions that speak to their reality in the present moment, and so both things are true. I mean, as a psychoanalytically trained clinician, I'm always curious about that resistance to visit the past, and I think it can be a bit reductive to think that because we're going to delve into the past and think about how, despite of their best efforts, parents make mistakes. It is inevitable. They're humans. But there's this fear that we're going to be just blaming mom and dad. There's this kind of misconception that that's what especially a psychodynamically oriented therapist is going to do. But really, we want to think about your subjective experience and kind of expand our outlook on it as much as possible. We know that the way that reality is constructed is so, on an individual level, is informed by so many different things. And it starts with mom and dad. This was your entire initial environment. This is who taught you. It's who taught you who you are before you could ask the question of who am I, right? By the way that they responded to your needs, by the way that they cared for you, loved you, and perhaps failed you. And naturally, they must have failed you because they're human beings. But once we have done this process of exploration, and a lot of times clients show up already knowing these, right? I mean, especially nowadays, there are all these tools available for people to learn about how they came to be shaped. But the moments of intervention in the here and now is about the therapeutic relationship, is about allowing that history to inform the way I will respond to you as your therapist. It comes in me kind of going against your expectations of where a rupture has generally meant end of the relationship. This is where I can offer alternative routes, right? The rupture and repair of the therapeutic relationship. And then the practical skills. This is why also, I mean, it's rare now to meet a therapist who is strictly adherent to one theory. We are generally integrative. I want to use dialectical behavioral therapy skills to kind of engage opposite action or emotion regulation skills, things that work on the here and now while being in an environment and a relationship that is corrective in its nature, that surprises you in the responses that have become so automatically ingrained in you.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I mean,
The seeds are there from an early stage, and it's natural. It's something that happens to all of us. And as you were saying earlier in the conversation, when we were talking about this example of someone having performance anxiety at work, there will be kind of these negative automatic thoughts that will come up, and those thoughts are often tied to a core belief around, you know, I'm not worthy, or I'm not good enough. So it's important to know where the origin story is, but then, as you rightfully said, you're forming this relationship with your client as you're making this exploration and helping build that insight and awareness. And rather than it just being a back and forth of, okay, this is what happened, your parents are terrible, not that anyone would ever say that, it's you have that, you know, alliance now where you can challenge and, like you said, offer alternative explorations as well as contemporary skills that they can use in their day to day. So it's just one piece of a puzzle.
Yeah, and as you're saying this, I'm also thinking about the value of accessing those memories, because we know that memory itself is reconstructive.
Yes.
When we recall experiences that we have for a long time kind of narrated that part of our experience in a specific way, have gotten sort of more or less uniform responses, either of empathy or dismissal or negligence. There is every time we access that memory, we change it a little bit. It is impacted by our emotional state in the moment we're accessing that memory. It's impacted by the listener's reaction to our memory. It's impacted by the current identity we hold at the forefront. And there's real value in accessing that memory over and over again, and kind of expanding the sort of the vantage points that you can look at that memory from. And this is a really profound value of the psychodynamic approach, or sort of the narrative approach also for revisiting memories. I mean, and all therapists do that regardless of a theoretical orientation. We're all curious about where it started, because there is inherent value in that reconstructive memory. It's both our strength and our weakness as human beings.
Absolutely. Yeah. But I do think it is really important to emphasize for our listeners, because I think a lot of people believe that memory is something that's really objective, that here I am telling you this story of something that was important or significant in my life history, whether it was last month, last year, a decade ago, when I was 3 years old. And the reality is, according to decades of research as well as theoretical orientations, is that memory is not objective. And so many things shape how we recall something. And what you're describing now, Reem, which I think is extremely important, is the way that people engage with and tell that story is extremely meaningful.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is really, I mean, I think there's a reason we avoid that conscious recognition that our memories are just ours.
Yes.
They are a segment of reality. Because I think there's something really lonely about the recognition that we don't share the reality we think we share with anyone but ourselves. Right? We all have. There is such a thing as objective reality. It's just we don't have access to it. Our memory and our cognition does not create a raw replica of reality as it happened. It is just our very individual vantage point, informed by so many variables, whether it's our temperament, our cognitive capacities, our emotional state, the relationships we're in. There are so many things that impact the way that we encode and later access that particular event, which may seem to us like a fact, and we can get really fixed in that retelling, but that the lonely truth is that this was just what you were able to attend to, the cues that you were able to attend to in that experience. And I want to caveat by saying that it doesn't mean that it's not true. It doesn't mean that it didn't happen, but that the reality in its full context is so much more expansive than what we can bear to tolerate at any given moment. There's something really lonely about recognizing that we cannot hold that objective truth of every experience we live through.
Very interesting. So some of the inputs that we look at are the early childhood experience, and then we were talking about how those might show up in the day-to-day. And you had said, and we talked about very briefly, this idea of automatic thoughts. So what are some of the other kind of presentations or expressions of these untold stories?
I mean, I really wish these thoughts came up consciously. It would be so much easier for people to kind of pinpoint them and work again, or sort of engage in opposite action around them. But they end up kind of forming the stage that life happens upon, right? It gets played out based off of these, or built on these subconscious slogans we carry about ourselves. And it
Slogans, I love that. Unconscious slogans.
Yeah, they're really powerful. And I mean, one common example that I've often seen is minimization of suffering, right? But especially to someone who's new to therapy, who was also already hesitant about seeking therapy. That discomfort that I see clients go through when they see my emotional expression in reaction to some profoundly traumatizing and painful stories that they're telling. And there's kind of this shock that their experience, that neglect, that trauma, that separation, that abandonment actually elicits an emotional response in the listener, because they never tried telling that story to someone who listened attentively, who listened non-judgmentally, engaged with their subjectivity in as much as possible, of course. So there is these slogans can look like, it's not worth it, especially in Arab culture. We see a lot of that, like, it's not a big deal, right? This minimization of really traumatic incidents, the brushing off, or I'm just complaining, or I don't want to be an ingrate. And it's both and, right? And this is the thing I really try to remind my clients of, is that yes, we can be grateful about all the blessings we have in our lives, and we need to look at the wounds we've incurred over the years so that we can know how to handle them when they're informing the way we're showing up in our relationship to ourselves and others. And so those are the very common things that I see with my clients, which has been predominantly Arab clients, but also working in the States, I saw a lot of that minimization, and I also saw sometimes a fusion with these slogans, where nothing ever works out for me, or I have a hard life, right? This really concerning slogan of my life is hard, and subsequently approaching anything that comes up as a challenge that will defeat you, or things like people always leave, or people can't be trusted, or people are trying to take advantage. These are really powerful. We're rarely able to catch them as they inform the way we relate to others. And this is where therapy comes in, right? This is where we as clinicians kind of try to interrupt that process and ask about what's informing that. Where does that come up in your body? What does it tell you to do, right? So it's based on all of these sort of micro interactions we have with our clients, where we try to keep sort of helping them pay attention to that slogan informing the way you're describing that interaction or that relationship.
I would love to talk more about one of the first slogans or sets of slogans around "it's not that bad, it's not a big deal," because you mentioned that it's something that you've seen a lot with your Arab clients. It's something that definitely resonates with me. And you also said in some way, shape, or form, you saw it in the US. There is definitely like a universal aspect to it. But then also I think there might be kind of like an Arab specific kind of presentation and an element. So this is something relatively common in a therapeutic space. So when someone comes in and, tells you something that is profoundly difficult, sometimes it's in their own lived experience, and sometimes it's their lived experience as well as intergenerational components. And they tell you that, and it's okay, and all of this kind of stuff. How do you work with that in the here and now?
Yeah, I mean, I've thought a lot about it because I mean, I come from that background as well. I grew up with that narrative as well of kind of minimizing it. Someone is always has a worse experience than yours, and unfortunately, that holds true, especially today, where there are so many collective traumas that are unfolding before our eyes that we feel some shame about expressing our pain and suffering around normal life traumas,
relatively mundane things,
right? And it feels again ungrateful and shameful and weak to tap into how those very personal and intimate experiences have now translated in the way that we hold ourselves. And so generally I'm curious about the discomfort. I ask about what comes up when you see me asking more, when you hear me asking more. And sometimes they'll try to really brush it off as, I don't want to make a big deal. This isn't why I'm here. It's generally what they'll try to kind of reroute. I'm here about my symptoms and I want those symptoms gone. And so I'll start asking more about how do you think this might play into your symptoms? I wonder if that discomfort of recognizing what that experience did, or I might even start before that and ask, does that experience show up now? Do you think about it? Does it ever intrude on your thoughts? And what does it feel like for you to hear me want to know more about it? Tell me about that resistance, right? That desire to move away from that closer inspection, giving space to that particular experience. And sometimes they'll kind of pause because my face sort of tells them that this is something really heavy. I want to feel this experience with you. I'm naturally kind of experiencing a response. And they'll be like, "Are you okay?" I'll be like, "Yeah, I'm just, I'm feeling." I'll express an emotion like, "This sounds really terrifying," or "This sounds really painful," and they'll be like, "Well, I guess it was," right?
Yeah.
It'll be kind of a retroactive thing where it takes a long time to just allow themselves to honor that experience.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting. And as you were sharing that, what I was thinking about is some of the discussions that we've had internally at Thrive over the past year and few years, actually. One of the patterns I would say that we've seen with our clients, especially from certain places, is even sometimes a desire to pause therapy, because with everything that is happening in their own cultures, countries, family systems, broader collectives, it feels indulgent that how dare I, with, my relatively comfortable, safe life, allow myself the opportunity to sit in front of someone and complain about my past and my present.
This is very familiar to me. I mean, I'm a Palestinian psychologist. I came across that so often over the past 3 years, that discomfort, that indulgence, right? And the way that I've come to think of it, and at times I've fallen into that trap myself, where I kind of moved away from wanting to look deeper into my psyche. But the way I've really come to understand it is that it's kind of our duty. And I'm not saying it's your duty to go to therapy, but it's our duty to stay curious about our internal wounds, about the changes that we're experiencing, because we need, while there is so much suffering being experienced and so many people don't have access to psychotherapy, if you do, if that is an opportunity presented to you, you are part of that community you want to serve. If you can serve that community being in more introspective, more knowledgeable of yourself, you can later extend that knowledge, that insight, the skills you've acquired onto others. We're not designed to have a sort of a monolith life and access to things. We have varying degrees of access, and those who can access, whether it's therapy, whether it's accompaniment, whatever means that, or journaling, whatever means they have to take care of themselves, to remain curious about themselves, because what's been happening has really kind of compressed our desire to be curious about ourselves. Our attention's been pulled to the outward, to the external world, and so little space is left for our internal world. Is that for some of us, it's kind of our prerogative, our duty to remain curious about ourselves so that we can be of service in that insightful way to others later on when that opportunity presents itself. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense, and I think it's a really beautiful reframe. And I can imagine for people that have, like a history or a pattern of kind of minimizing things, even hearing that there might be a little bit of resistance, but ultimately speaking, curiosity is it's a gift, and it's a skill, and it's a muscle that we need to kind of work on. And on top of it, serving the groups and the people that are important to us through being more aware, the benefit that it brings to us on an individual level of noticing what comes up for us allows us to know ourselves better and to intervene if there's something that we need to try and rewire. At the beginning of the conversation, you were saying, I wish some of these automatic thoughts were conscious, but they are very subconscious or outside of our awareness, really. And so the more curiosity we have, the more that we can explore, whether it's in therapy or through any other means, then we can identify that this is something that's difficult for me. This is when I know that it's starting to build up, and this is something that I can do to manage those symptoms as well, which is often the reason that people do want to or feel the need to come to us.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm also thinking about this fast-tracked humility, right, that we had to grow into over these years, where so much of that resistance and shame and guilt around having access to things that so many people couldn't but needed so much is, I believe, in some way a result of sort of our infantile conceptions around omnipotence, that we have control over delusions of having control over so much that we learned time and again we have no control over, right? We think that by depriving ourselves of pivotal essential means of care for ourselves and those around us, that we are kind of extending care to those who are deprived. This is and I understand it psychoanalytically as kind of this delayed, or actually it's not delayed, it's normal, but we've had to kind of accelerate our growth out of that perceived omnipotence. That actually I do not have that control. I am much humbler as a result of this experience. I understand the sphere of my control, which has turned out to be much smaller than I thought it was. But this is this is how much movement I have. This is the sphere that I can exist in, and how can I try to maintain the health, the well-being of that very limited sphere. And so it requires a level of humility for us to be able to recognize that and then work within those limitations, those parameters.
So this is one of the slogans. It's not so bad. And we talked a little bit about where that's coming from and how people sort of act, and maybe a reframe so that people can continue approaching themselves with curiosity and reaping the benefits of that for themselves as well as their communities. Another one of the slogans that you mentioned earlier is something I've seen a lot of as well, and that is people are going to leave. So let's talk about that one a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really painful and self-perpetuating, unfortunately, thought that I see kind of playing out over and over again. It's sort of what Freud termed as repetition compulsion, when that, and it is always informed by early abandonment or perceived abandonment. It can be, and I mean, commonly how I see it playing out is, the father got a job offer in a different country. The family had to stay in their country of origin. He went to work for the client. As a child, it was interpreted as an abandonment, and as a continuously disrupted attachment, right? The father would come back. There is context, right? They're able as adults to put it in context that had he not made this sacrifice for us, we wouldn't have had all these different material things. But this is one of the most common concepts or sort of early experiences. I see this concept forming around the slogan of people always leave. What I see is that these clients will tend to become very hyper vigilant around relationships, especially romantic relationships, but also in friendships. And another form I see it showing up in is clients who have moved a lot, who have had to kind of have had repeated disrupted attachments, where they've had to lose bonds over and over again, or those attachments have been reshaped over and over again. And it really they develop very protective mechanisms around how much intimacy they'll allow into the relationship.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think both of those examples are things that I've seen. They make a lot of sense. And I was kind of nodding along with what you were saying, because it is two very different presentations in a lot of ways. So in this first example of someone, and, maybe the child understood cognitively or can understand now as an adult that there was an actual need for it. Emotionally, the way that it felt and the interpretation at the time is people are going to leave. And so I can see that playing out in adulthood, in romantic relationships and friendships, as you said, as soon as we catch a whiff of, they didn't answer me, they're not available this weekend. It's like, are they just going to up and leave too?
Yeah.
And what I've also seen as well sometimes is people will start bracing before anything even happens. The interaction can be fine. Everything is good. Responsiveness is there. And it's like, well, this has been too good for too long. Something is brewing. And then on the other example is, what's the point? Why am I going to bother putting in my time and my energy into building these relationships only to have to sever them at a later point in time? So I'm just going to keep to myself, keep things superficial, which might be protective in terms of it stops you from feeling what is really unpleasant. Separation from people that you care about is really painful. But at the same time, it deprives you of meaningful emotional intimacy with others.
I mean, that's exactly what you're describing. They sort of empty the relationships of the profound emotional value that they could have in an attempt to protect themselves. And it can look anything from prematurely withdrawing, right, from the relationship, fearing, anticipating, as you're saying, kind of that this bond, there's a rupture that won't be repaired, or there's this person is moving on in their lives, and it's being perceived or read as an abandonment on the subconscious level, or it can look as sort of this overcompensation or holding on, right? Becoming a bit too perhaps needy of the relationship is how it can be described by a layperson, is sort of this fear of abandonment and trying to reaffirm your value, trying to create a need for you in that relationship by the other. And these are both kind of extreme examples of that of what that could look like. But it can also look like really subtle things where suddenly you're more withholding in that relationship, whether it's about the intimacies of your own thoughts and emotions, what's going on in your life, or a bit more dismissive of the other person's experience. You're just trying to create that distance in preparation for this sort of this early trauma that has already happened. And this is the really painful thing about repetition compulsion, is that we kind of subconsciously see, and I've seen this in my practice so many times, is that subconsciously clients get lodged into these dynamics that they recreate in the most painful ways, without noticing. And the question becomes, why does this keep happening to me? What am I, and it's great to arrive at this place of what am I doing wrong, right? Or what am I doing that participates in this construction of reality? But to arrive at that place and allow yourself to recognize that there is a repetition compulsion, and it is a subconscious process without the blame, without the anger and the abandonment of the self in that process. That's what the companion, which is embodied in the therapist, is for. So I'm not an expert in your life, but I am an expert in how to manage the terrain of self-exploration, and this is what I'm there for. I will accompany you in that journey.
And I think it's important to emphasize that, you were saying these are two relatively extreme, or let's say very clear examples, but the way that it really shows up for
most people is in these very small, mundane ways. And that's part of what you're trying to help the client understand is what are the patterns, what are the origins of it. Now you've recognized that, for example, when I feel like someone is getting too close, I put this barrier, and yes, this is something that protects me from future pain of separation. At the same time, what does it cost me? And what is it that I'm able to maybe recalibrate
Yeah.
in small ways,
Yeah.
you know? Because I think also sometimes when we recognize that we have an input into some of the things that are difficult for us, at least in the here and now, it's really scary to face them because the understanding is, well, I know that logically, instead of pushing people away, I should keep them close and deepen those relationships and, you know, be very connected. That's pretty drastic from your kind of natural way of doing things. And so there is a way to kind of take little steps and evaluate how things are working for you and then regroup and try again.
Yeah. And this is where this is the part that explains why therapy takes a long time, right? The deepest learning we get out of therapy is experiential, and we know that even in classrooms, deep learning happens when it's experientially conducted. Is we need to go through these experiences over and over again to repair these older templates. We need to add new layers of possibilities, and that happens through the repeated exposure to alternate possibilities, and those and that can be in the therapy or alongside the therapist as you experiment outside of the session and come back to this safe space where you can process and examine, critique, and improve on the way that you want to improve yourself, right? To live in a way that is more aligned with values, more aligned with the desire for deeper connections. And therapy is really one of those places where you get to experiment in that closeness and in that push and pull of the relationship, because a big part of our training is to be able to tolerate that kind of at times clumsy intimacy that shows up, and to remain curious about where it's coming from.
Well, and then if I think back to like the first example that we were talking about with the performance anxiety and things like that. So the slogan that person might have is, nothing I ever do is going to be enough. I'm not enough. So we can see that maybe the self-worth is on the lower sort of side of the scale. Now, as something like this comes up and we learn sort of the origin and we learn various things that have happened over the course of their life, what are some of the little things that people can do to experiment with and challenge that?
Yeah. I mean, I'm generally kind of looking for evidence against, right? And what we do in that journey of evidence against is in that process of looking for the evidence against, we come to discover the confirmation bias that they've engaged in along the way, right? Is that they've attended to cues in their environment that confirm that they're not enough, and have discarded of or completely neglected any feedback that went against that belief that I'm not enough. And there's always evidence. Oftentimes, I've rarely. It's this kind of classic CBT interventions where you put the thought on trial and you kind of look for evidence for and evidence against the trial, evidence against the thought, and we'll really find factual evidence for that goes against the thought. But it's really hard for clients to tolerate that this is actually real, that this was experienced, and it falls on me as the clinician, as their therapist who's known them for some time, to access those memories, those incidents that they've mentioned, and I can bring it to the table and say and discuss that with them. Is that evidence against that you're a bad parent, for example, or that you're not good enough at work? The promotion you got, or the rate, or the presentation that you were asked to do. And it takes a really long time for them to accept that they have formed a reality that attended only to this perception of themselves.
Yeah, and every day it gets stronger because, as you were saying, with this confirmation bias piece, is
I believe in this. And it's a human thing. Even when we look at our consumption of news, what we do is we have our ideas, we have our beliefs, and unless we are very aware and very deliberate, we are going to engage in echo chambers. And some of those echo chambers can be in our own head.
Yeah.
And when you were saying about the performance anxiety and I always do everything wrong, what I remembered or thought of is something I think a lot of us have experienced, which is, being a young child and being a relatively good student. I think you know where this is going, and coming home from school and being like, got a 97. And then
Disaster.
What's the question? Where'd you lose the 3?
Yeah.
Right. And so this is an early experience that kind of teaches you that what you did can be put over here. What we're really going to focus on is this. And again, kind of going back to parents or other socializing agents, it's coming from a place of, growth and improvement. But some of the signaling that can happen to the child is, I'm not good enough unless I'm perfect. And then what happens over time, it's striving for that perfection. And then what's really interesting too is when that perfection is achieved, if it is achieved on something objective like a quiz or a test, I don't really see people enjoying it or recalling it the next time they're in a similar situation. It's like, okay, whatever, 10 out of 10 or 100 out of 100. Whereas 3 out of 100 that I got wrong, I will ruminate, fixate, trying to overcome it. And I will forget this 100, but those 3% are going to live rent free in my head.
Yeah. It's what the cues you're attending to, right?
Exactly.
It doesn't, the perfection piece, it does not align with how you, with how we've shaped our understanding of ourselves. The way I understand myself is I need to try harder. I need to do perfectly. I need to work, on myself more and more. And so that 10 out of 10 that is effectively guaranteeing that I have perfected this topic, right, on this sort of objective measure, is discarded, or actually it sort of bounces off of you because it doesn't align with the core structure of who I am. As I am someone who needs to work harder. I'm not enough. I am sort of my sense of self-worth is grades based.
Yes.
And so I mean this is a very prominent way that our parents, especially parents of millennials, really they were focused on academic achievement, and it was done so. And as you said, with good intentions, right? I want you to succeed. I want you to compete. But what it did is it deeply ingrained this hierarchical view of the world for the child, and then this comparative view of the self.
Of course. I mean, I think you're spot on, and there are so many people that are from Arab background in Arab communities, especially that went to schools that like published rankings. People will still until today refer to, he or she was third in the class. It's like, that was 30 years ago. Why are we still talking about this? But that hierarchical element was really there. And while you can understand why it is important for people to perform well for various reasons that you kind of mentioned, it really does plant something and it's difficult. And what also I think ends up happening is if you know that the only way you're going to get semi-positive feedback is to come home with that 100 out of 100, then your self-worth really becomes tied to getting approval, and that approval only comes from perfection. And perfection, quote unquote, is much harder to achieve when it's no longer being measured by quizzes and tests and things, that you can prepare for.
Yeah, which is the majority of our lives.
Exactly.
We can only get grades for so long until we have to kind of contend with the realities that nobody is really is grading us anymore. The feedback we get is rare and selective. It becomes so much more nuanced, and the way that we can evaluate ourselves is internally, right? Is that I am sort of the keeper of my own assessment, and the metrics that I have internalized tend to be really harsh when it's been when the love that I received was also achievement based, and this was so much of what we saw and what we grew up with is you kind of you got a present when you scored really high in your exams, but very rarely was that love or care affirmed unprompted by achievement, and this is really the humanistic approach of unconditional positive regard. It's difficult to exercise that continuously, but once we have mastered to hold the way to hold ourselves and others with an unconditional positive regard, in as much as possible, we can really argue around the idea of unconditional as a way of relating, but this achievement-based affection and reinforcement that we got is really heavily present later on in life.
Yeah, and I think it really speaks to, the difference between internal and external validation, and you only have some level of control over one of those things, and if we become overly reliant, understandably so, kind of given the trajectories that we've been speaking about, then really in some ways your self-worth on a day-to-day and overall is really shaped by what the people around you are voicing, which is not even necessarily how the people around you actually feel and how they see you.
Yeah, and I mean, it completely wipes out the pleasure of the labor itself, the meaning of how we've chosen to spend our lives, where it becomes much more about the feedback that is provided, which again is rare, random, very dependent on the person issuing that feedback, but really the joy that we experience of engaging the labor that we engage in, of the relationships that we have, that's about being present and sort of self-assured in the relationship, self-assured in your own capacity to withstand the ruptures and changes and dynamic shifts in life. And that is really very much about having that sort of relatively internal, stable core.
Yeah, and I think you were saying as millennials, Arab millennials. So, a lot of things have changed in the way that in the parenting kind of guidebooks, quote unquote. And one of the things that we know now that's really important is the process over the outcome. Absolutely. If we think about growth versus fixed mindset, if we think about grittiness, some of these like very established psychological concepts, we know that people that tend to succeed are the ones that know that effort is what really matters rather than innate ability. Not that innate ability doesn't help and give you a push, and that passion and that perseverance is really important. So I think a lot of us as Arab millennial parents are now kind of using that in the feedback that we're providing to our own children, rather than, okay, you got a 97. It's like, okay, like let's talk about how you prepared. Let's talk about the growth or the progress. Let's talk about, next time and what we can do, rather than focusing just on this is the grade. It's like what went into the grade. And then the other thing that I think is quite different, and I've been trying to remind myself of this as a mother, is trying to help them develop those internal validation skills. So although I do for sure say, I'm so proud of you and all of that, I think it's important. I'm also now trying to, remind them or give them space to express and feel that pride for themselves, because there's only so much value that mom or, whoever's pride is going to have. But when you're able to see an accomplishment, whether it's the process or the outcome, and say that.
Yeah. And it's about taking pleasure in in having acquired that skill, or in having arrived at this achievement. And that is, I mean, we want parents to say, I'm proud of you, because that's what gets internalized as well. It, you know, eventually it starts to sound like I'm proud of myself, right? That's the change that happens along the lifespan. And we do want our clients to be able to kind of reflect on the value of that journey, the value of the acquisition process. And this is what we have to do kind of as teachers and parents is, why does this matter? Why does learning this skill matter, or learning, you know, kind of intaking this information? What is its value in my life, and how can I relate it to real things? And that can be relationships, that can be academic achievement, science, you know, whatever it is. But staying kind of connected to its value in your life.
Of course. Yeah. And then also like reframing. One of the things that you were talking about before when you're working with someone is that kind of thought challenging, right? The cognitive restructuring and like, let's look for evidence for and evidence against. One of the other things that can be really helpful is a reframe.
Absolutely.
And we've referenced that multiple times in this conversation, but then also reframing this concept of failure as it's not something to be avoided. I mean, obviously different failures carry different implications, but in some way, shape, or form, I would imagine most failures have some kind of a value and therefore are not totally failures in a way, right? Because they allow us to kind of stop, reflect. If we approach it with the curiosity, it helps us kind of build our understanding and awareness of ourselves, show up for ourselves and other people differently, and, you know, make changes.
Yeah, it is really, I mean, I know it sounds like perhaps at times an overly positive twist, but these are genuinely times of growth, and not in spite of the pain, but because of the pain that accompanies them. It increases I'm not saying go out and pursue failures, or I'm not saying, you know, but our threshold for tolerating discomfort, for navigating discomfort, and all that comes with it, grows in these experiences of so-called failures, and. Yes, there are parts of them that are agonizing, that are perhaps shame-inducing. Those are also parts to be curious about, and kind of to, you know, we don't want to deny them. We don't want to, especially living in collectivist cultures. The individual failures are also interpreted
Reflected on the group.
Yeah, they reflect on the family, whether the nuclear or larger family, and are kind of, you know, fodder for gossip in small communities. And so it becomes about really holding all these dialectical tensions.
Yes. And it's that and. So earlier in the conversation, you were saying it's not or, it's and. So yes, like it's not about saying you failed. It's like, amazing. What's your lesson? We can say that, and we can also give space to the fact that it was incredibly painful, agonizing, terrifying, shameful, whatever are those things. And we can also have a frustration, a sadness, a disappointment that we had to kind of go through that to get there. Like all of these things can coexist. And I think that coexistence is something that's really important for people to kind of allow.
Yeah. I mean, it's training, right, in this kind of overly positive way. Right? We are kind of with these experiences of failure or not meeting our own standards. This is how we're learning how to tolerate more of life's demands, more of the gap between our own expectations and the outcomes that we were able to achieve. And this is again where kind of acquisition of skills is important. Learning to kind of not shy away from the emotions, from the thoughts that are associated, perhaps also automatically triggered, and kind of recognizing, oh, there's mom, you know, in my head. There's you know, my aunt's feedback, or sort of her kind of snarky comment that I got so used to kind of hearing, that I've really internalized, and sort of recognizing who lives in that subconscious mind, and recognizing their voices that later show up as our own.
Yeah. And I mean, many people, in the last episode that we did, one of my guests, Bara, was talking about how
in her own therapeutic journey, giving that voice a name to just kind of
Yeah.
separate from
Yeah.
herself has been just a really helpful exercise in kind of pushing back on it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are times where it feels kind of comical,
Yeah.
right? When you realize how many people sort of you've
Yeah.
internalized and they've all made it onto the stage.
Yes.
And everybody gets the mic depending on
Yep.
what's going on in life. And it's part of the joy of also growing up in a community
Yes.
where, I mean, there were functions for these,
Of course.
for the internalization of these voices. They at some point, drove you to do more, protected you from things in your environment, and then there are these times where they become pathological, right? The impact of these voices, of these internalizations, translate into pathology in the way that you are kind of are debilitated in living the life you want to live.
Yeah, I think that this conversation has been really kind of helpful in fleshing out what brings people into a therapeutic space and what is actually happening. And even for those who have never engaged in therapy, have no interest in engaging in therapy, I think the concepts still apply. We can experience symptoms of something like anxiety, which is a common mental health challenge, something we see all day, every day in our communities as well as in our clinic. And people's focus is typically, like you said, on the top of the iceberg. This is how it's showing up in my day to day. But when we delve deeper, we often see that a lot of that is coming from expressions of those unspoken slogans, which I love, by the way, as a conceptualization or operationalization. And we form these things through our early experiences. And one of the best things that we can do for ourselves is to approach them with curiosity and compassion, and ideally with some kind of a companion, but that's not a necessary thing, to recognize where is it coming from? How is it showing up? What are some alternative interpretations? And what are some of the ways that I can push back so that I can ultimately, the tip of the iceberg can melt?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I have to say that I am a big proponent of having a companion. I mean, we know this is an ancient tradition. People have, for self actualization, for growth, you do need a second pair of eyes. Ideally, ones. I mean, historically, it's been people with a spiritual or religious status, people in a sort of a scholarly status, people whose views you respect and kind of look up to. And in contemporary times, it's moved towards the companionship of the clinician or the therapist that is trained in how to maneuver, again, that terrain of self-exploration rather than having these kind of wisdoms that belong to a certain ideological framework. And we can always get into how much ideology is in theoretical orientations. But that is the function of the therapist, is that companion, and if we think about Arab tradition or Islamic tradition, Al-Ghazali was one of the first people who recommended that you should have a mentor if you're trying to self-actualize. It can be the sheikh, or it can be what he described as al-khalil, right? A friend, a companion who you really trust to accompany you on this kind of on the gift of reflecting you back to yourself in ways you won't be able to see yourself. Again, we go back to the way that we construct reality. It's limited. And the sooner we come to accept that, the more open we are to the vantage points of other people.
Yes, it's absolutely critical since the beginning of time. And I would argue now probably more than ever.
Yeah.
Thank you, Reem. Thank you so much for your insights. It was such a pleasure to have you today.
Thank you for inviting me.